Everyone, 1, 2, 3, clap. And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have the casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. Here we are on one of the all-time favorite episodes of fans and even Patrick Stewart, The Inner Light. And I think it's one of our favorite episodes. I'm wagering to guess everyone here really loves it or likes it a lot. And so today I'm joined by the Doctor. Hello, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. By Moni. Welcome back, Moni.
Hello.
Nanu. And Sean from Trek on the Tube.
Hey.
So thank you for all of you, for all of you, every one of you, and for Merry Christmas. Thank you for Merry Christmas, everyone. It's still
it's hard.
It is November.
It's still November, man. You're worse than Walgreens.
It's post Thanksgiving game.
Right?
It's been a tradition. Humbert and Moni have known me longer than Sean has, but it's been a tradition in my family to start immediately after Thanksgiving. So I actually started 2 days ago. Yeah, at not even midnight, I started to play Christmas music, and
I'm still having leftovers from Thanksgiving. I mean, for crying out loud.
All I can say is, in these dark times, we need a little Christmas right this very moment. All right, so The Inner Light. Does anyone want to give the summary? Do you want to give the summary a go, or shall I do it?
You should do it.
Episode summary.
I vote you.
I vote you as well.
All right. So over 1,000 years ago, settlers on the planet Catan.
I know.
Is this how you're starting the summary?
Why not? Why not?
Seriously?
It's the truth.
1,000 years ago.
1,000 years
That's
ago.
That's not how the episode starts. This is
settlers on the planet Catan.
It's our fault. We voted. So.
Yeah,
created cities.
He's doing a full historical breakdown now.
We got the
cities.
despot that we voted for.
And one of those cities. Excuse me, sir. Get in your seat. So you can't interrupt the summary once it's underway. Anyways, these settlers created
That's a new one.
created a city called Resic. And in the city of Resic, many fine people did amazing things. It's in the northern province. And they created a probe which they sent out into space when they knew that their civilization was doomed. And this probe happens to meet 1,000 years later the USS Enterprise, and sends out a link or tether, and it latches onto our wonderful protagonist, Captain Picard. And Captain Picard is immediately thrown into a memory, if you will. And we get to experience life on Resic, on the planet of Catan, which was settled 1,000 years ago. And it's beautiful. The episode, in this episode, we just like Picard are suspicious in the beginning of what's going on. He thinks it's a hologram, or some kind of trick. We know the Romulans love to do this kind of thing, so he must be thinking, oh god damn it, I got trapped by Romulans. So he starts out super suspicious, but we have his beautiful wife, Elena, right? Was it?
I think
Elena?
it's
Elise.
with an
Oh,
N.
Aline. I can't believe I just saw this and I couldn't remember her name. So Aline kind of reassures him that nothing's going on, and he starts to rediscover who he is. He's told he was under a great kind of strain from a fever, and that's why his memory might be shaky, but he kind of perpetuates that story. But we know he still remembers his whole life aboard the Enterprise and being born, etc. But here he is in in this weird place. Anyways, he gradually gives into it, and so do we. We actually just totally forget about, because of the great performances given in this episode, we completely forget, I think most of us, that you know, anything, you know, I remember when I was first watching, I was just like totally captured by this episode, so I wasn't even thinking. It was just like, oh yeah, like here's Captain Picard now, he's living on this planet, and then just as he begins to figure things out, like he figures out that the reason why the water supply has been diminishing so rapidly is because of a drought, but more than that, it's because the sun is unstable. And unfortunately, the technology on the planet hasn't progressed actually much further than what we as current humans are capable of right now. They haven't been able to colonize other worlds, and they certainly don't have the technology to escape a supernova, which is what seems to be coming. And then you know, so he just tries to make the best of things. He succumbs to his wife's wishes and asks to build a nursery, another beautiful moment in the episode, and has children, and we, you know, follow that, and it's wonderful, and we get to meet his daughter Maribor and his son Batai, who's named after his best friend, who I forgot to tell you about in the summary, but Batai is the council leader of Resic, and they're really good friends. And during the whole time on this other planet, Picard is kind of playing with a flute, a Resican flute, and he starts out with Frere Jacques, but ends up creating a melody that seems to be of his own making, and that goes on throughout the episode as well as a motif. And then Batai, the namesake, you know, the son, becomes a musician himself. It's beautiful, wonderful stuff happening here. Lots of teary-eyed moments. And then we end with an old, you know, after his wife's death, we go to another scene where he's very old, and they're about to launch a probe, the very probe that Picard runs into later, but unbeknownst to Kaman, who is his Resican self. They bring him out to witness the launch of this probe, and that's when the program that the probe was delivering ends, and everyone reveals that they were just all the whole experience was just all in his head, and that it was a way for the civilization of Catan to live on. And then of course we know this is actual truth because the Settlers of Catan board game exists. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, anyways,
The one disappointment is that the Star Trek edition of Catan has nothing to do with the planet Catan.
No, I know, it's funny. It's very interesting. It's very cool. It's a cool parallel. We could talk about it more. But anyways, the episode ends and Captain Picard is once again, he's revived. The probe does its work. It finishes. By the way, there was a scene in there where they were trying to revive him earlier, but he looked like he was going to die, so they just let the probe stay connected to him. But anyways, the probe finishes its work, and then they beam it aboard. Picard's super happy to be back. He actually, like, it reminded me of A Christmas Carol in a sense, where he's just like, where was I? You know, different message, but similar emotion, I think. And then he turns around and smiles at his crew before he's led to sickbay by Beverly. Anyways, at the end of the episode, in a later scene, it's assumed that Picard's downloaded everyone or briefed everyone on what he experienced, and Riker walks into to his quarters with like a little box in his hand, and he goes, "We found this on the probe," and he hands it to Picard. And I know Riker's looked at it because the acting in the scene's really beautiful, and he kind of like acknowledges like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be heavy for you," and so Picard opens this up when Riker leaves. It's the Resican flute. It's the very flute that he'd been playing and that was given to him by that he had and that his wife presented to him in the beginning of his experience on Resic. And he hugs it. He like holds it. It's like really awesome. And then the episode ends, and I want to cry just thinking about it. That's the summary. What did you think? Did I leave anything out? Is it good?
I mean, you went.
It was a fun summary.
Thank you.
Yeah, you went all in, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's a very personal episode. I think you can't help but get really attached to this episode, so I couldn't help but make it a very personal summary. But I would love to. I guess you guys probably already know what my rating for this episode is going to be. So there's no guessing as to that. But I guess I want to talk about first what I want to here is like when you guys first saw this episode, what did you think of it? Like what was your inner light story? I think I was there for yours, Moni, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you probably were. Yeah, hands down, it's one of my favorite episodes. And it's I was trying to think about what exactly makes it so powerful. And I think it's just like it has a lot to do with just Patrick Stewart's performance, but he really pulls off like the experience of the poignance of an experience of a 30 to 45 years of life lived on another world with a completely different family, something that he never got to do personally as a human. And then he wakes up and discovers that this all transpired in 25 minutes on the Enterprise. I think that's my favorite part of it, but I'll cede the floor to you guys.
I don't remember what my impressions were when I first saw it.
I kind of do. I kind of remember the discussion after.
Do you?
Yeah, I kind of actually do from the library.
Oh my God. Give us insight.
Well, so our friend Jisoo was flipping out about this episode. She really loved it. And then I think you really liked it too. I just remember all around the vibe was pretty positive about this episode. But like I don't know that like for Jisoo it was like mind shattering because we talked what we talked about at the time was that the experience that she was, I think that was so profound for her was what you said, Moni. She kind of echoed that, but also many humans I think experience, and I've had this and she's had this, and I don't think you remember your dreams, Humber, but but I've had dreams that are reoccurring and they take place in this like other place, like another like kind of land that is like, you know, it's very consistent. Like when I dream about this place, it's always the same, and there's like seems to be a continuation, but it's not here, and I know it's not it's not here. So there was this like quality to it of like, is this another life lived? Like what is the nature of like experience? Like can you experience something? In a sense, this was the first episode that like evoked thoughts of like virtual experiences, right? Like if you go into a virtual place, are you live there for what seems like 35 years to you, is it a real experience, etc. So I think we were all talking about crazy shit like that. Sounds right, doesn't it?
That's about right.
What about you, Sean?
I really couldn't tell you what my first experience watching this was because I used to watch TNG.
Like 5.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was watching TNG in Voyager with my mom, right? But I was a kid. So I don't remember half the episode. Like I don't remember the first time I've seen all these episodes. I just know that as I rewatched all of Star Trek as an adult, there are certain episodes that I keep on telling my wife, wait until you see this, right? And The Inner Light was one of them. So it clearly, had an impact.
What's your personal reason, if you don't mind sharing, for like the impact? What's the biggest kind of reason why this episode impacts you?
I think just I don't know, it's so creative, like on a storytelling level, just to put this character in this outlandish situation where he like gets to live an entire other life is just mind-blowing. And then of course it's so deep because it's Picard, and we know that he never has kids, and they just brutally burn all his family in a fire in generations. And so like this is so This is so deep, right?
It's hard, it's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
And it's
a great
super meta because his son Daniel plays his son Bataille in the episode too. So it's like especially deep. It goes meta for that reason.
There's this.
I actually thought about you when I saw this episode because I know that you just recently had a kid, and so I wondered if those kinds of emotional notes now played a different like punch different parts of your heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I rewatched, like as I said, I rewatched The Visitor recently from Deep Space Nine. It's completely different now that like you have a kid, right? And this as well. It's and then you rewatch. I mean, there are certain movies, certain episodes that kind of have an impact. Like it's very different when you watch them. Interstellar, I saw that when I was a teen when it first came out, and then I rewatched it like as an adult being married, and then I rewatched it, having a kid. And every time you rewatch that movie, it's kind of different. You have a different comprehension or different interpretation. And I think The Inner Light is the same thing.
Yeah, I think
I can't wait to watch it like in 20 years, right?
Well, it's a sage episode in that way.
In space, because we're all dying out here.
God. It's true. It is a sage episode. I think that's the good word for it, because it does have that quality of like somehow having something within the span of just 50 minutes that connects on some level to every human. It's like it kind of addresses a very basic message. And now 30 years after it aired, well, a little under 30 years, because it's maybe now it's like the 30th anniversary of it, close to there. We're kind of still, we were just starting to be worried about the environment in the 90s, and now we're kind of facing some really devastating effects of climate change. And so you can't help but wonder.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Truly, Star Trek at its best, because it's not just like this completely outlandish, amazing story that they've created where like this guy has to gets to relive this other life, but it's also that classic preachy Star Trek where it shows us the problems that we have with our society, which in this case is the environment.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just amazing.
Those little
proves the point too. It proves the point of like Star Trek. Like you don't have to have something that's action packed to be not boring. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, Star Trek is boring because nothing happens." Like, not much happens in this episode, but every scene is so heavy. Every scene is so important that you don't need all this action or what's going on.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Humbert.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, before we get into global warming, I was just going to say one of the really powerful parts. I think one of the magical qualities of this episode is even that, like, for instance, Picard's friend, Counselor Bataille, he has literally 4 or 5 minutes of screen time on this movie. And yet, when he reappears on that screen and you hear his disembodied voice at the very end, and he says, "Hello, my old friend," or something like that, you're literally brought to tears. And it's and it's incredible that they were able to evoke this emotion within a 45-minute episode. And you're like, it's actually like, it's almost as if you can experience what Picard must be feeling like waking up 25 minutes after the probe attaches to him, and yet he has these 45 years of experience now. I think that's one of the masterpiece qualities of this particular episode.
It's beautifully pulled off by the makers of this episode. We should give credit. Let me go on to IMDb here. But yeah, that isn't like, I don't know what that's called in film techniques. Your brother might know, but like the whole way the episode is constructed, and where even having seen this episode over 10 times, I still get lost in the experience because the way it's done is just so clever. Like and again, that's the whole, everything was operating at like the best Star Trek can operate for this episode, in my opinion. So the director was Peter Lauritsen, who's done a ton of TNG episodes, and then Morgan Gendel and let's see, Peter Allen Fields wrote the teleplay, but the story was by Morgan Gendel. And I think I'm pretty sure there's like YouTube interviews with him and stuff like that. I recall on my many journeys on YouTube late at night, looking into this episode. Yeah, it was beautifully constructed again, and it gets you every time. It's also one of those episodes that I feel like, and I don't know if you guys agree, but like it's a great way to introduce someone to Star Trek in general. Just like if you don't want to introduce them like right from the beginning, if you just want to kind of throw them in, to Star Trek at any point, this would be a good starting point, I think.
That's actually something I wanted to ask you guys, because that's probably the only note that I have. I didn't need to take notes for this one. That's the only question I have. Like this episode is amazing, but it's because I know Captain Picard, and I know that they have this, they're voyaging and they're traveling across space, and they've got all these adventures, and then we also know what happens to him. We know the story of Picard. Does this episode work for someone that's never seen Star Trek before?
Yeah, I think I agree with that point. You need to have
context, right?
Yeah, you need context to the change, because certainly, I mean, by this point, Picard is a lot nicer, I guess, than when he started off in the earlier seasons, and all that is context for when he has lines when he's in the other life, in the alternate life, where he says, I never thought that having children would be something that I would need to fulfill my life. I mean, you don't understand the gravity of that statement coming from Picard until you've seen the previous seasons where he's basically dismissed children, outright. You need that in order to understand how much of an impact this interaction with the probe has on him. I would agree with that assessment.
That's a fair point, but I think that like the episode kind of, I'm willing to wager that the episode, the story of the Kaman story, in other words, is so captivating that it's almost like it's almost like showing someone a pilot of a new show. Like imagine if you're gonna watch a show like a show where like this man got like accosted by a probe and was gonna live out his whole life on this other planet. I mean, that could be, that could have lasted, by today's television standards, that whole thread could have lasted like, 3 or 4 episodes. So I think I'm willing to wager that people will still connect to that story, not even knowing Captain Picard. And I'm willing to wager that like they'll be curious enough to go, well, this guy's pretty cool. Like, let me find out more about him, because I think the messages that are conveyed, love, falling in love, like what it's like to have children, like even without knowing Picard's specific, his specific like struggle with this, I think that it's something that just about any human will connect to in some way. Like I don't have children and I would love to have children. Like it's like my reasons for not having children are totally different from Captain Picard's reasons. Maybe they're not, I don't know. But I still have that like feeling, that like strong feeling of like, oh yeah, like this is what it's like. And he says it in that scene. He's like, before I had children, I never really even thought there was a place for them in my life, and now I have them. I can't imagine life without them. And it's kind of a cool, I think, a universal theme.
Yeah, but I still think it helps to have all that, all the other seasons to sort of, to color in the gravity of
it enhances
the change.
Yeah,
if
you're a fan,
for sure.
Naturally, but I'm just saying as an introduction, like it might be successful. I think it might catch a couple. It might catch people. We'll let the Picard desk crystal decide. No.
You'll notice that if he disagrees with you, he won't let you have it. He'll just go and do a Twitter poll.
It's true. I've won every argument Sean and I have had through Twitter polls, actually. So I'm
Really?
batting 3 for 0. Yeah, it's true.
I'm not aware of the results of
And-
these Twitter polls.
And Sean's wife supports me on a couple of issues too, which is great.
Oh man, that's a low blow. Just
Yes.
bringing the wife into it. Wow. Gosh. Man,
So I don't know. I might have the more generic voice in this in this group here.
I also wanted to echo the comments made about the environmental the slow environmental catastrophe that's happening on the planet. I think that's the thing that in this rewatch for me personally really stood out is just the subtlety of what's happening to the planet. Especially when you get to the end that the daughter says, yes, I put on, whatever the
sun protection,
and everyone's wearing these hats. And if you'll notice the lighting when they moved out to the exterior sets is a lot brighter.
Well, it even gets bright. It gets brighter throughout the episode too, which is
right.
interesting.
And all of that I think is and then the scene where Picard speaks to the I want to call him the proconsul, but he's not. Whoever that visiting
counselor,
the counselor, right? Was he?
He's an administrator.
The administrator and
the administrator. That's right.
Right. Had power for over 30 years because he's still administrator when in like his old state.
Well, he also says in the beginning of the episode, he also says something like, "You'll see this form of representational government works." It seems like there's like some kind of like
there's a subtle
there's a subtle reference to like some kind of change in the way things were governed before on Catan or on or in this region or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that you pointed that out. But it's true. He does hold his position for like 40 years.
He held it for a long time. And even more interesting is that he's lying to the people. He admits that the government knew that this catastrophe was happening. And I think that is such a that's one of the bombshells of the episode is when Picard learns that they know that it's happening and they're not telling the people. And they're not telling them yet.
And then it appears that Picard was worried he was going to be thrown off the council.
Right.
Even bringing it up yet. But that is, I think that's one of the more haunting parts of the episode. It's like, how do you... It's not like global warming, which is like... It's a little worse than global warming, honestly. Global warming is a... it's going to be... There are gradations of how catastrophic it will be, but we have things that we can do to lessen the impacts on human civilization, and it won't necessarily be the death knell, right? But this is like a star going supernova. And like, how do you? What effect does that impact, or what impact does that have on saying the apocalypse is coming in X number of years? Like, what will people do if you just say that? Like, does it?
Right.
And I think that's why that was the motivation for hiding it. But the crazy thing to me, though, is that Picard encouraged his children to have children themselves with the probability that they'll die at the age of like 10, which is, I don't know where I come down on that, but I think that's another point of discussion here.
Yeah, actually, that is an interesting point. Oh my gosh! And there's grandchildren at the end when they're all like,
there's
like,
well, that may not have been. He may have discouraged that for all we know. It says don't have kids, and his kids just like wipe their ass with it and say no.
But there's a scene.
Now
he says get married. He doesn't talk about kids. He says get married. He encourages his daughter to live a full life.
I guess the way to look at it is that like he is a bit of a scientist, so there must be some aspect to his thinking where it's like, well, they're in love, they're having children, at least the children will enjoy a short life and they'll have the best short life that you could imagine. I can't imagine these kids, they looked extremely happy. And so it's like, I think that like on one level as a scientist, you can't help but remember that as humans, we're just like a part of this enormous nature, like there's like, we have like an immense capability of controlling our environment, and these are not even humans, these are the settlers of Catan. But anyways, they're like, but as sentient beings, we have this special place, we think, among nature, as custodians of nature, as like manipulators of nature, as like builders, as creators, things like that. All these things that we think of ourselves as, but we're just part of a huge system. We're like to another. There might be a more advanced type of being that looks at us the same way we look at ants, and that's certainly a thought. So when he's, I think that in that sense, like, again, like a 10-year, it is unfortunate, but it's not a cruelty that we would place upon this child. It's like, it's just the way of life. Like, this life is just going to end at some point soon for these people. So why not live it to the best you can, And it also kind of it also adds in room for like that like little hope that we all have. Like, we all believe that like there might be a miracle, like, or something like that. And it's like, well, something might change in 10 years. Like, maybe the sun is not going through a supernova. Maybe their calculations were incorrect. It's just like a spurt in its life, So I think that it's okay. I forgive Captain Picard. I forgive Kaman.
Well, I mean,
Maribor, but yeah.
Yeah, I forgive Maribor too.
I mean, granted, I think Picard, especially early on, was attempting to fix the situations. I'm not so sure how aware he was of the supernova aspect of it. I mean, I don't know if at the end he was aware of it. I know obviously the Enterprise crew knew of it because they're looking at it from the future.
Yeah, I don't know that they know it was a supernova. They just knew that the planet's life supporting abilities were fading, right? Because the anaerobic bacteria was disappearing in the soil. Like, basically, there were crops and they'd all starved to death. Like,
yeah, some of it reminded me of, and maybe it's because the director just passed away, and so he was kind of, the movie was in my mind, but The Man Who Fell to Earth, the opening of that movie, when Bowie is going off, and the landscape of his home planet kind of reminded me slightly of this planet, and the sense that that planet was also dying, and that's why they're sending off Bowie and all that. And but so
there's the landscape of Southern California.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. But
there's
go ahead.
Sean mentioned Interstellar a little earlier, and I think that it's interesting that Interstellar kind of asks the same, like, it kind of proposes the same idea that, like, except in that one, I don't think it's a supernova, but like the Earth has just lost its ability to grow food, and so they build these gigantic spaceships with the hope of saving civilization. So that's a big idea from this episode that I thought was important too, which is like, I think that there is like this feeling we all also have of like we think on the whole it's good to be a human, and it's good to be part of the human civilization. It's like there's so much worth saving about our civilization should this kind of end ever occur. And so I think that's like a deep idea that, like, I think that's another reason why this episode's perhaps so timeless, is that like this is something that we all feel. What do you guys think?
Well, I wanted to ask what you all think about the technology that we saw in the episode, because the impression I got from the civilization is that they weren't very advanced. And yet we get this probe that is able to bypass the shields of the Enterprise and hit on Picard, just boonk. And
well,
why Picard of all
they
people?
didn't have
Why
their
not Riker? They didn't have
their they didn't have their shields up, but I think that
well, I don't know. You see a fair amount of evidence of technology. I mean, on the one hand, it could literally be anywhere at any time because it almost looks pre-industrial. But then you see Picard walk in after it's the first night he spends in Resic awake, and he returns, and Aline lets him in, and she opens the door with like an electronic panel, so the door is electronic, right? So, and you know, they throw some things out about like atmospheric condensers, so clearly there is some level of industrialization and scientific advancement. It's just,
but not.
I think that
long distance travel.
Travel.
Right, not interstellar travel.
One could argue that like these scientists that have been aware of the situation or how dire the situation was for like 2 years now, one could argue that they kind of just realized that this is it. We're fucked, and we have no way of actually leaving this planet or saving ourselves. So they invest and develop this technology because this is the solution that they found, and they invested everything they could in that. And so that's why that specific piece of technology is so advanced, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also really strong evidence that this is a very artful civilization, like based on the clothing and like the flute, etc. Like just like the way the buildings are. There's a lot of like iconography. What's that?
The vessel that the soup is served out of is very. I don't know if you
right. Everything about there's yeah, and even the shape of the probe, like it's based. Yeah. Either it's based on a design that, you know, Aline had, or that was like some kind of inside programming joke that the programmers, the Catanian programmers decided, oh, let's make a necklace in the illusion that looks like the probe. You know, whatever the case is, that you could see that this civilization somehow, much like the Baku, they hide their technology or seamlessly kind of like infuse it into their world to not like make it the emphasis, right? Like we never really see a computer, if I recall, anywhere in the episode, or no one really ever talks to a computer. But one can imagine if they can build this probe that they definitely have computers or some kind of like computer interface. Do we see a computer? I don't remember.
The most advanced thing you see is the panel that opens the door.
Yeah.
I think that based on kind of just like my feelings of all the evidence, like even the doctor comes in with a medikit that resembles, you know, obviously that was because it's easier to get the same prop, but like it resembles Dr. Crusher's medikit. It's not like today a doctor who would even do a house call, by the way, would come in with like a huge bag or a suitcase, you know, like full of equipment.
They are a very personal kind of culture, aren't they? Because I'm assuming they have big cities and what have you. It can't be just like, well, it isn't just this one city because the administrator goes from, you know, city to city, but it does seem like a very kind of personal community that they have. Mm-hmm. So maybe they could do like, maybe they do have big hospitals and stuff, but the doctor prefers to actually do the house calls and go see the patients.
Well, their medical technology must not be that advanced either, because we know Bataille dies at a fairly young age. Also,
Right.
Well, he probably found out as a council member. He probably found out the news and was like, "I'm just gonna eat, drink, and be merry and die," you know, because everyone else is screwed. And so, sorry, that was dark. Anyways,
wow.
But like where I was going with that is that it makes sense then that they would create this probe, to me, like like that the pinnacle of their technology was a device that would give you an experience of what it was like to be from Catan, and Resik must have been a celebrated city to have made it into the story, if you will, and Kaman must have been obviously a real person who was an inspiring figure in there of that time. So I think that's why they chose to convey Resican experiences through and culture through this person. You know, who knows? It's pretty cool to think about.
Person to link to than the amateur archaeologist.
Exactly.
Plan.
But you did ask, like, why did it lock on to Captain Picard, right? Like, that's a really good question. Like, it could have been anyone.
Because I always, whenever situations like this come up on Star Trek, I always ask myself, well, what if it had been a Klingon ship?
Exactly, right.
You know, I mean, what would a Klingon have done if they had been put in that situation? you know, let's say Martog or whatever. You know.
Hey, call the captain and just carry on, right?
Or some
Right.
I think it would have.
Might
I
been
think
a
to be.
very different episode.
I think it would have been. I think it would have been a profoundly changing experience for whoever the probe
Come on.
latches
Do you
on
really
to.
think like some
But-
Ferengi would have reacted well to this?
Yeah, I think so. I think.
Why
that
are you
I think
wearing clothes?
that-
Would have been his first reaction. If you're my wife, why are you wearing clothes? You know.
That's a really good. That's a really good Negus. Negus sound.
Inconceivable.
There.
God.
Inconceivable. It's really, really.
Right. I mean, it just, and that's where, like, the episode has kind of this almost fairy tale kind of component to it, where and the probe just decided to shut down once the thing was over for Picard, and
Well,
I
no,
just
it
thought
didn't
to
decide
myself,
to it. It was programmed to do that.
Well,
but
okay, but why? It doesn't make any sense. Why only touch one person in the entire universe?
Yeah,
I mean,
I do agree that the probe needs to be reusable, because
Right.
it's like a one-time thing. Which, first of all, it's pretty impressive. It stayed around until Captain Picard of the USS Enterprise arrived.
well, that's the part that we
Um,
just chalk up to chance, right? Like we can roll the dice.
No,
But,
but what if it had been that stupid race, the ones that kidnapped Geordi?
Oh my God!
What would they have done with the probe? You know, it would have been a total waste.
Well, then isn't it great? Isn't it great that Picard is the only person that got
The
touched by
Packlids.
this? I'm gonna say that like this actually taught.
That they sent out.
What's that?
We know that
What's
that's the
that?
only probe that they sent out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that made explicit?
You
No,
think
it's
there
not
are
really
other? They think
explicit.
there are other probes?
I don't think it's necessarily foreclosed by what they've said in the episode. They just said they
Right.
launched
True,
preserve
true.
civilization.
I just assumed it was the only
Yeah.
probe, but then it would make sense if they send out multiple.
Yeah, because like
So maybe,
you're-
there are.
there's in one basket. Like, what if it hits after it? Like,
I like that idea. I like that. See, it increases the probability of the chance, right? Like it makes it a little better to imagine that Picard just hit
That's
one
like-
of those probes.
So is there like a what do you call it? Is there like a group, a galactic group, people who have been touched by these probes, and they get together? Like,
It'd be cool. It'd be cool though if like every probe had a different story and a different artifact from.
That's what- yeah.
well, that would
You know,
make
so
sense.
maybe this
Like,
could have been the right. This is the Resican probe. There could be a probe for the other cities. Each city could have its own probe with its own. It's like a time capsule. Actually, it works. Actually,
That's the Picard show.
in
That's
that way.
the Picard show right there. He's gonna go meet all the other people that were touched by the probe.
that's Ultimate
And then-
Picard. Yes.
Well, and they'll form an orchestra because everyone has a different. Someone has like a Resican tuba and a Resican like violin and like a Resican. You know, so it'll be the Resican orchestra. It'll be perfect.
Is there this one guy that has the triangle because he couldn't get anything right?
The Resican triangle. He's like, it's like, you know, it works perfectly. The Catanian actually.
Wow.
I do want to say that on a personal note, and I think I know how Moni feels about this, but I don't think I ever talked to you about it, Humbert, and I know I haven't talked to you about it, Sean, too. But I love the whole musical character of this episode as well. Like throughout the episode, there was this component of like one of the things that helped you kind of like understand how much time had passed, and then also just like something to focus on that was like touching was the music, the Resican flute, and he starts out playing Frere Jacques, which we heard him sing earlier in the season. And then that evolves into this like melody that like it sounds very human, but it's not something that's familiar, although it does sound a lot like that the theme for that show Outlander, which is a Ron D. Moore show, if I'm not mistaken. So it could be that they're related.
Oh, that's funny.
But anyways,
Well, I had
the
no
music
idea that was one of the like 4 episodes they selected to include in the like Star Trek 30th anniversary soundtrack. When you said that, you sent me this morning. But sorry,
it's true. The music is actually very it's like the #1 requested thing from the Paramount vaults, like from
Oh yeah, you
fans
read that
and
too,
people.
right?
Yeah, I did read that.
Yeah, I thought that was
and
interesting.
I thought that was cool. And then also it was so popular that they made an orchestral version, which I sent to Moni this morning. They made an orchestra. The composer, who is let me see here.
Is it Chataway or whatever?
Yeah, thank you, Jay Chataway, who composed this piece. Also did a full orchestral 6-minute version, which you can find on the 30th anniversary album. This episode also won a Hugo Award.
Yes.
Really? I didn't realize.
Yeah, it did.
Hugo's went to TV episode.
Oh yeah, Star Trek's won 5, I believe.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who has won 3.
Ooh.
I think Babylon 5 has won 3 as well.
And then lots of people think that Patrick Stewart should have been nominated for an Emmy for this performance. What do you guys think? I think so.
That's worthy.
Okay, in my mind, there are so many episodes in which he should have been nominated for like an Emmy.
That's true.
Because he can take the worst script and actually make it, believable.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so when you give him something that's just genius, he's amazing in it, right? This is.
What did you guys?
See him in Logan, right?
Yeah. Right.
God.
Let me ask you, because one of the things that was very much praised at the time about the episode was the makeup. And
oh yeah, I was thinking about that actually.
The makeup,
props and sets, every.
Yeah, but the makeup effects in particular, and obviously the one major difference now is I'm watching it in HD. As a matter of fact, this episode was part of the first Star Trek Next Generation Blu-ray sampler pack.
Oh yeah,
when they were kind of testing the waters for Next Generation on Blu-ray,
for remastering.
Right, they put it out. They remastered this one and the pilot and one of Worf's episode, and they put it out on the market. So I watched it in very, very high quality, and the makeup, I have to admit, looks like makeup. I mean, obviously at the time our televisions were not as high definition, so we didn't, it didn't jump out. But I think the makeup, at least for me personally, not saying it's not good makeup, but I'm just saying is that it stands out more as masks.
I think that also has to do. I think that also has to do with something a finesse that you've actually seen Patrick Stewart age 30 years in front of you, and it doesn't look anything like 30 years.
No, but it looks it looks like a mask. It looks like a mask. Like you can tell there's.
Eileen's aging was a little better than Picard's.
Yeah.
I thought she looked very believable when she was on her deathbed. But
yes,
I've never really seen until maybe very recently. I've never really seen great aging makeup in anything.
Yeah,
like it always seems like that's like a really tough area of like prosthetics is like aging an actor. Like how are they going to look, when they're older or whatever, etc. It's never really believable, I don't think, until recently with CGI. There's been some really cool times where you're like, oh yeah, and more and again, de-aging seems to be the thing that works better. Ironically than aging.
You have a guide as to how somebody looked beforehand. You don't.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
What they kind of look like.
Yeah, I never would have noticed that like that the makeup was like not good, simply because I feel like aging people has always been tricky, and especially on TV, it's never been flawless. So
yeah,
this episode doesn't stand out to me in that way. It's like, okay, they aged him, and like it's not him, right? Especially now that we've seen him. But
there's like, and that's why I think the most successful like aging in films has always been casting an older actor in the part.
Well, except for Wesley Crusher. Well, Wesley Crusher, young man. I did like how similar
Patrick Stewart's son looks to Tom Hardy, which kind of like, you know, it shows that Tom Hardy was a great casting for Nemesis.
If you say so.
I love Tom Hardy in Nemesis. I think he's great.
I
don't know why
but
that
I
came
don't
up.
think he has any resemblance to Daniel Stewart, is it?
Yeah. Daniel Stewart's awesome on Twitter, by the way. If you don't follow him, he's a pretty cool character. He's totally different from Patrick Stewart, which is, you know, of course he would be, but but he's a little rough around the edges, but he's a beautiful heart, and he always talks about really great issues. He gets really pissed really easily too. It's kind of fun to watch. I don't know why.
What did
Get
you
off my
It
fridge.
doesn't look like Tom Hardy at all.
I know he doesn't at all.
What are you talking about?
He doesn't look like Tom Hardy at all.
I know. There's no resemblance whatsoever.
I'm looking at Daniel Stewart right now, and that is not Venom, right?
No, are you looking at young Daniel Stewart and young Tom Hardy?
They look nothing alike.
They don't look alike.
At any age, they look nothing alike.
Never mind.
Twitter poll.
I concede. Right. You guys
Do a
win
Twitter
one.
poll. Do a Twitter poll.
Actually, I might. Let's just see what
Don't encourage him.
happens.
Sean may win his first Twitter poll here.
I have to start creating many like Twitter accounts so I can vote and win all these polls that you do. God.
I'll know.
Oh, God. That's good. What do you guys think about? Did you think there was too much of the cutaways back to the Enterprise? Did you think the episode could have been more about Picard? I mean, what do you think? Do you think the episode would have been better if it had just been Picard gets, you know, bunked in the head, he passes out, he wakes up in this alternate reality, and you don't find out as the audience what the hell is going on until that, you know, that sequence where people start coming back to him, and then the missile goes up, and the probe goes up. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I personally have found the cutbacks to the Enterprise like very jarring, and I was like,
I
wanted to go immediately back to Catan, right?
They're kind of like filler almost.
Yeah. Although I guess they would, I should have been paying more attention, but I guess that those were the pieces that separated the various segments of Kaman's life, right? Like, cause
Yes.
Well, we do go back to a little. Yeah.
Transition.
But those could have been commercial breaks just as easily.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. I keep forgetting that there are commercials and TV.
I think that like
have had them, you know, gotten an explanation at the end and just been completely immersed the entire time. But so, what do you think?
Well, I think the only reason that those scenes work is because of the last scene where the tether is broken. That scene is so wonderful. Like, you could tell, like, the actors show genuine relief that Picard is okay, and like the way Beverly's just staring at him, the way Riker's staring at him in that end scene. Like, if you didn't have these these occasional cutbacks to show that they were genuinely worried that Picard was going to die, that I don't think that scene would have been as impactful. And you needed that scene to bring us all back to the Enterprise. So I think that they support that end scene more than maybe they are filler, but I think they're useful filler, if you will.
I would compare them to what they do in X-Men Days of Future Past. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Oh, yeah.
I
But
love that
I
movie.
know
Yeah.
essentially, they send Logan, you know, to the past. He like embodies his past self.
Right.
But then now and then they cut back to the dystopian future thing where they're trying to, you know, defend themselves against the Sentinels. And none of those scenes are really good because it's all like dark and gritty, and it's all very cringy because every X-Men is always cringy. But but those scenes are kind of necessary in a way. Like, I mean, they show you what the reality of the situation is. compared to this, like this kind of, well, I suppose Days of Future Past is still reality. It's just the past. But in this episode, it is like an invented thing. What is this?
Oh, this is the B-side, right? This is where the title comes from. The writer had this idea that he would name all of his episodes after a B-side of one of the Beatles singles.
Oh, really?
So, but it never worked because he wrote something else. He wrote one episode that was going to be called Revolution, but they didn't let him use it. So
isn't that the episode where Hugh comes back? Isn't it called Revolution? No, maybe not.
No, it was something else, and they wouldn't let him use it because they'd already used Evolution, and he just kept the Inner Light as just his own personal in joke.
Mm.
That's the George Harrison song.
But that would have been funny to have Beatles B singles as titles.
It's kind of interesting, though, Humbert, if I may share something that I still remember to this day, is that a lot of short stories that you wrote when we were in high school were based on songs that you like. And there's still one story. There's still one story. I won't say it on. I'm not going to say it on here, but I know that it's based also on a song. So I think that's cool. But it's interesting. There is some connection to the song, to the themes in this as well. One of the words, the lyrics from the Inner Light is "arrive without traveling, see all without looking, do all without doing," which is basically what Picard is doing or experiencing throughout the. He's not actually there on Catan, and it's. I thought that was a cool link to the story and adding to its profoundness in a sense, and like creating this tether out into like the broader human world that connects back to Star Trek.
One thing to bring it to a wrap.
Are we bringing it to a wrap? Are you saying it's time to...
I'm trying to keep... Yes, I'm trying to control it here. Well, the final scene...
Is there a mutiny on my goddamn ship?
Indeed, sir.
I didn't say slow down. We're still at warp 9, damn it. The line must be drawn here. No further.
I'm drawing the line. The final... I really like the final scene. After Riker brings him the flute, did you notice that there's 2 glasses on his table?
I did notice that,
and I thought, wow, that's a nice visual.
The lighting in that scene is also really beautiful and unusual for Star Trek. It's very backlit and dark.
When he gets back,
but I liked also how there seemed to be a spotlight on the Ruskin flute, but it was just done in such a way that it seemed natural. It didn't seem like unusual or anything like that. I do have a request. If you do want to end the episode, that's fine with me. But can you let us know what the book says and and any other trivia as per our tradition?
Have you read the novelization of every single episode?
Oh well, no, not every episode has novelizations.
Oh, okay.
And this one does not.
But it does have a sequel episode in a sense, in a small sense. There's an episode called Lessons where Captain Picard is in love with this
the pianist, right? Yeah.
The pianist. And he actually he plays the Resican theme. And then they riff off of it and they create like a piano duet.
Maybe it was the Ruskin piano. We didn't know it.
It could have been. Oh that's part of the band. It could have been the Ruskin. It totally could have been. I never thought we would expand this episode, as at least in my mind, to where now we have the idea that there's maybe thousands of these probes like out there, and that like a Ferengi or even a Romulan might experience what it's like to be a settler of Catan. Has everyone here played Settlers of Catan? Have you played that game?
I play it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. How about you, Sean? Have you heard of Settlers of Catan?
I have heard of it, and I do play a lot of board games, but I've never played that one.
It's a really fun board game, and also there is really no connection. Catan is spelled with
a K, I
K
believe.
in this
Yeah.
episode, and
Yeah,
and
it's
the and
Catan,
Well,
right?
Right.
I tried to look it up. Well, I was at least wondering if the creators of Catan were Star Trek fans, but I think that the board
they're
game.
German, so they probably are.
I think the board game, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the board game predated the episode slightly.
Yeah, they just popped into culture around the same time, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
It's because the writer of this episode was captured by a Catan probe, and so was the inventor of the board game, and that explains why.
All right, I have here. I'm going to read from a page of a field guide to the aliens of Star Trek: The Next Generation by Joshua Chapman, age 11.
Oh, I guess I'll read from the book then later.
So these are he's writing about Catan, and he gives a rating of 3 stars. And this is Joshua Chapman writing, age 11. These are some aliens that died out like 1,000 years ago. The Enterprise comes in contact with one of their probes, and it makes Picard think that he is living out his life on their planet so that people will remember them. In his other life, he has a wife and 2 kids, and he plays a flute, but not very well. I thought this was a good episode, but I hate it when on TV shows they show happy families like Picard and his kids, because it is all such bullshit. It is fake. It makes me want to set fire to myself. I feel empty inside, like there's just a shell of me that walks around. And I hate that there is even an image of me that exists in the same world as fake shit like this. Looking like a normal person feels like I am supporting this lie of bullshit happy families.
Oh my god.
Shit.
Wow.
That's actually really funny.
Once again,
you know Joshua Chapman. Oh my goodness.
I would have killed to have read something written by Sohail, age 11, about this episode.
that would be truly hilarious.
Well, Sohail was age 15 when
I
this
know.
episode aired. So
We never even know because you were too old when it came out.
Guys, did you notice that Counselor Troy is not in the episode?
I did.
Oh, yeah, I did.
As all the
how would it have...
of Next Generation.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. How would it have been different though? And where the hell was she? Like in an emergency like this, where he seems to be under this, like Picard's under. Do you not think it'd be useful
25
to have
minutes she was missing from the bridge?
She could have been
Where was she? Once again,
where was Counselor Troy? Like, where was she having chocolate? Was she sleeping? Like, what was Counselor Troy doing?
She's having a banana split sundae on 10-4.
10-4 with Guided, and all the while Picard is possibly dying on the bridge. I would think that like
negligent in her duties.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Riker and Worf's stupid solution to dealing with the probe. They're like,
Worf is just destroy it. Once again, Worf is overruled.
Well, he always has the same plan.
He always has the same plan. It's just truth be told, that is true. Yes, that is.
Blow it up.
Blow it up. I love Worf, man.
Oh my gosh. All right, so Patrick Stewart remembered I'm having the earliest makeup call. So to your point about the makeup doctor, he had makeup being put on him from 1 a.m. in the morning till his set time, which was 7 a.m. Can you imagine?
6 hours.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Let me ask you about Old Man Picard. Do you think, I mean, of all the episodes of Next Generation that could possibly have any real impact on the new show, do you think the Inner Light should have any kind of impact in any way, in either in the form of just a nod to it somehow? Because really, when you think of the experience that he had, he lived what, like 40 years of another life.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I hate about Next Generation is that these things happen. These episodes happen. It's a good episode. A very impactful thing happens, and then next episode, it's like nothing ever happened. On any other show, there would have been some like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm still getting back into the groove because I'm still not used to this being my reality. No, Picard's just like boom, boom, on all cylinders.
Well, to be fair,
It's very professional. It's true.
he has a recovery episode from Wolf 359.
Right, and that's it. That's it. But I mean, this is, I don't know.
But you know what? Also, to be fair, like all three of you know, I think that I had a concussion like a few weeks ago and was injured from it. But you don't know what I've been struggling with because I don't share it with you. Maybe Picard just does. I not intentionally, by the way. I would love to share it with you, but we just don't have the luxury of time to spend with each other and things like that. So I think that there's a component of that.
That's not true. That's not true. And in our previous episode, if this is in essence your show, okay, this is Old Man's to Hell. This show,
yeah,
okay, and there are continuity bits because I've been present for them where you've said, "Oh, I'm recovering from my thing. Oh, I'm feeling better." There are little nuggets there are little continuity tissues that unite the episodes so that even if some future audience for some reason is watching this Starfleet boy is watching this, they can kind of gather which episodes come first, if they don't know the order of consideration.
It's true
to begin with.
I can't remember where I read it, but like Ron Moore or somebody said that like that this was, of course there was an element of this where like TV of the time was episodic and not necessarily the idea was that in syndication it wouldn't air in order, so you should be able to just like kind of watch a couple of episodes out of order and still enjoy the show. But they also said that like there definitely, as we've noted watching TNG, there are things that do keep coming up and kind of like they actually do, like characters actually do seem to grow from them. And it is sad that the only other mention of this episode, I do agree that the only other mention of this episode is that Lessons episode, and it's only because of a musical nod to it. I don't think he really goes out of his way to tell, to talk about his experience on Catan.
And another
right, well, he could have talked about it then, but he never really talks about it again. And so I do agree with you, all kidding aside, that like it's one of those missed opportunities, because I think it would enhance Picard. Going back to Old Man Picard, the future show coming up, like the only thing I can think of, the obvious thing that comes to mind, is that at some point I can imagine Picard going to Catan and looking at more evidence of what happened to the civilization, and maybe like trying to like in a way give them a proper memorial, like, so maybe he's part of a federation, or he starts, or like, creates a federation excavation or expedition rather, I should say, to Catan. It'd be neat also if he's like in the Picard series, if archaeology is kind of like the emphasis to his career at this point. It'd be neat if like there are lectures that he's giving about the environmental impacts. There could be things like, in the ideal world of the Federation, where like Earth has been restored to an idyllic environmental condition, there could be other things like resource management and things like that could be like a way to relate those ideas to us that we're going through today. And Catan could be an example that he uses for that. Catan could be like a what if for Earth, of modern day Earth still.
But don't they actually like offer him a job regarding something with the oceans or the tectonic plates, or like
that was in Family.
In Family,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he turns it down. Although he's very compelled by it.
Regarding Old Man Picard, I know you guys want something like this. I know you guys want something like deep and profound and very connected to one of these big episodes of TNG. Like I would like some sort of follow-up to The Chase.
Another
Oh
archaeology
yeah,
related one.
another
Yeah.
archaeology heavy
like
episode. Yeah.
Picard actually, we see that the Federation have been working on this, like uncovering more details about how everyone's interconnected. All of these species are interconnected for years, and so Picard kind of joins that. That won't happen. The only thing they'll connect to, if they do connect to something, is the Borg, because it's an enemy, like it's an alien race that people are like scared of, right? That's the only kind of connection that they'll probably do. Other than that, they're gonna do their own action-oriented Picard show. I know you guys don't want that. You don't want to hear that. But
I still have hopes that that he'll be old man Picard as an archaeologist. That's still my hope, but I know that it's slim. It's slim and none.
I mean, there's more chances that he's going to be like a teacher at the academy, and they'll use that to launch the Starfleet Academy show.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I'm just trying not to even think about it. I'm just gonna let the Picard, the old man Picard present.
You want a Beverly Crusher and Picard. You want a wedding.
Oh
yeah, I definitely want a Picard.
I don't want an old person wedding. No, that's lame.
What,
that's
Moni?
like
Do you have any?
Oh God, no.
Moni, do you have anything to chime in about the pending Captain Picard TV show? Like any expectations?
As we like to call it.
Send any expectations because I don't know what they're going to do with it. It would be great if we had some tiebacks to some of the great episodes of TNG and the more humanistic and archaeological side of Picard, but
it would be great.
I don't know what they're going to do with it.
It's written by the man who wrote the latest short Trek.
Michael Chabon. Is it Chabon or
Chabon?
Michael Chabon. The Resican flute prop used in this episode sold at auction for $40,000. So some lucky.
No, that was not me. I would not buy that.
Suddenly, Sohail leaves the show, drives straight to Humbert's house, knocks him on the head, and steals the Resican flute.
Oh god!
No, I'm just kidding. You can't even get. I've looked. You can't even get a replica of it at the moment. They're all sold out. So it's obviously in demand. So Roddenberry Store made this desk, the Picard desk crystal. I love this thing. I love to hold it in my hand just like Picard does and fondle it. When I'm thinking, I raise it to my head. Often does. Like, I'll do these things.
How often does that happen on Star Trek?
A lot. He's always fondling his desk crystal.
Is he? Okay.
Yes,
I don't know what episodes you're watching, but okay.
There comes a time on Starfleet Boy when you realize that the episode has dragged on for too long.
Yeah, when it brings out the crystal, that's went on too long. I tried, dude. I tried. I really did.
I know.
Wait, we're almost done.
I know.
We're almost done. Anyways,
you still have fondling to talk about, so I mean,
you could get this. You could get your own desk crystal to fondle.
8.5.
Just like Picard does.
I'm already doing ratings now.
8.5.
Oh, well, he is.
All right, fine. It's time for the rating. So we know the doctor's rating is 8.5. That's a shock to me.
Will Sohail say 10, or will he say like 14 or something?
No, it's a 10. It's definitely a 10. But it's also an unrateable episode to me because I do have deep connection.
No, there are no unratables. That doesn't make sense.
That's why I gave it a 10.
Thank
I
you.
gave it a 10. That's why it's a 10.
I give it a 10.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Sean, please bring us back to reality.
I give it a 9.
Yeah. Okay. So based on the cumulative
I don't
rating,
give anything a 10.
We can safely give this episode a 10 because 2 10s outweigh a 9.
What?
It's like
that.
I gave it an 8.5.
10s are like black holes. When there's 2 10s, it creates a huge. No, just kidding.
I give 2 episodes 10s. This episode and Family.
Those
That's
are your
right.
favorite. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's right.
But this averages out to be a 9 something, right?
Yeah, 9.5. So we're rounding up to 10. So this episode gets an
No!
overall cumulative rating rounded up to 10.
That has never been Sahel's strong suit.
Never.
Why do you even want our?
Well, we have to
Why
finish.
don't you just rate it yourself? Say, oh, this is a 10, and just
And nobody else's rating matters.
This is Administrator
Okay.
Sahel of the planet Catan.
I'm the administrator for 30 years.
Here's the administrator.
Democracy works very well.
I've known the rating was 10 for 2 years now.
I think you'll find our form of representational government works very well here on Starfleet, boy.
No.
No, but
you have a singular wit, Doctor.
I do have a singular wit. So, okay, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We do we do want to take a moment.
Why do
here.
we keep coming back? I don't know.
Sean is doing a series
He's already
called
celebrating
Trek.
Christmas.
It's true, I am.
We'll be celebrating Christmas for 2 months at this point.
And after Christmas goes on till January. Actually,
That's right.
People don't realize this. But Christmas actually doesn't end on December 25th. It actually goes on through January. So yes, that's true. There will be.
If he made a Star Trek show, there'd be like Christmas episodes for 3 months. It'd be a Christmas season every year.
That's true.
That's true. Are you listening to that, CBS? Give me a Star Trek show. Just go ahead and give me one. I'll make it awesome.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, gentlemen.
Hey, go carefully, Sahel.
Oh, go carefully, all of you. Wait, before you guys go, quick plug for Sean's podcast called Trek Talk, which you can download on all the things. Right? Is it called Trek Talk?
It's not. It's called Trek Chat.
Oh shit!
but it's also It's also officially non-existent for the moment because I haven't promoted it on my channel or on my Twitter.
Oops.
Well, this episode won't air for another week, so you have a week.
No, don't worry.
You have a week to get.
So the first episode is live pretty much everywhere. If you look for Trek Chat on any podcast service,
I found it on iTunes.
So it's
there. It was cool.
I haven't privated it or anything, so everyone can see it. It's just that I haven't promoted it officially. I was waiting to record a second episode before launching the project.
Which Doctor, after we end this episode in just a minute, you have to check your email. Anyways. Anyway, so that's the only thing we're promoting today, right? Or unless Moni, do you have anything to promote today?
No.
How about you, Doctor?
I'm checking my email. I don't
Well, okay, you can check it off.
Email.
All right, well, I am saying so long, and thanks for all the chats, and I'm going to end our broadcast, and live long and prosper. Audience, love to hear your thoughts on this awesome episode in the comment section below, or you can email me at sohail@starfleetboy.com. Please check out our other episodes, and thank you for joining us as always. And Merry Christmas.
Participate in the polls.
Merry Christmas.